And now, back to the man who puts the heart in shart. It's Tim Graham and friends.
Who's in the NFL here? You? You? How about you, Tim? You, Tim.
Welcome back to Tim Graham and friends. Is there anything to talk about this week, Jonah? Do we want to start with why you are podcasting from your childhood bedroom?
Well, actually, this is the guest bedroom that Kevin Adams was using, but since he's moved along, um, I changed locations. No, actually, this is my sister's childhood bedroom. And before that, my brother's childhood bedroom. It was never my bedroom, but I had some car trouble. Car's currently stuck in some snow on Parkside Avenue. I'm waiting on the AAA truck to come help me out of that jam a little later, and I'm parking my ass over here at my sister's desk and podcasting with you, talking to the F's of the world while I wait for the A's of the world to dig out my car.
I am Tim Graham of The Athletic, and this is Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. I am in my undisclosed location as usual. Jonah, do you have anything interesting there in your sister's bedroom you want to show us?
Uh, there's some interesting stuff that she does not want me to show you. What is this? This is some sort of I can't get it. Uh, Massaging tool for.
Oh, I have one of those.
Yeah, you have one of these?
Yes.
Oh, that's nice. I like that. Yeah. So here.
It's also good for your lower back. There are
Yeah.
things you can use that for.
You know what she has? I'm not gonna grab it because I might mess it up, I think. But like, you ever seen one of these? I am gonna grab it. I used to have one too, but then it broke on me. They're like alarm clocks that simulate the sun.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. I've never used one.
I had one years and years ago, and I don't know what happened to it necessarily, but
It
it was
wakes
cool.
you
I
up
like it.
gently.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, she's
Well,
got cool toys in here. Oh, let me show you this.
yeah.
This is meaningful to us. I hope this is okay. No FCC violations.
No, you can say we've said that word many times. Your auto zoom is working though. As you
Oh,
put that in, it's messing with your camera, but it's doing a great job.
all
Whoa,
right.
special
So,
effects.
all
John,
right.
I have to start paying you more. The
Let,
technological improvements.
let's get to it. I've heard the F word in, settings that you're not supposed to use the F word more this week than I'm normally used to.
Yeah, I heard there was a comedian on Channel 4 that said it on the morning. Was it the morning show?
I can't confirm or deny if that happened, but this happened at the Joe Brady press conference. Did you catch that? There was
No.
a slip there, and he mispronounced the word and caught himself a little bit that it's not a letter of the law. Like there was an F and a U, and then maybe a couple G's in the way it was said, but there was a plugin or something like that. So I
All
think
right.
it slipped through the censors, but if you were there, there was also a quote from Joe Brady where he said, "I have so much power."
He did say that?
Well, he was saying Bill's Mafia, I have so much power and respect, then realized that he power wasn't the word he meant to say. But if you just took that out of context and clipped it, it was Joe Brady saying, "I have so much power."
Well, he does have power, but maybe not as much as Sean McDermott used to have, because Sean McDermott used to have a direct line to the owner, and Joe Brady now must report to the general manager. And I think that what we saw really is confirmation that Josh Allen is the most powerful man in the Bills organization. And I think that you could say maybe even more powerful than Terry Pagula. I used to have caveats on that to say, in terms of public sentiment, if Josh Allen were to stand on the steps of City Hall, he could make a declaration and people would get right behind him, whether it be this coach must go, this general manager must go, this coordinator, this coach, this political candidate. He could probably swing elections locally if he wanted to. Um, it was really a love fest for Josh Allen yesterday. I wanted to get your take on that, Jonah. We haven't talked about it. We were both there, but we were doing our own roles and we were in our own lanes, and we didn't really have a chance to talk. This is us coming together and discussing it really for the first time since it happened on Thursday. And one of the takeaways, of course, was the word alignment. We heard it repeated. It was hit. We were hit over the head with the word alignment very early in the news conference from both Brandon Beane and Joe Brady. And then a lot of the post news conference content, the one-on-ones that took place. The Joe Brady had an informal meeting with the media back in the usual Bills media room, in which it was, just he kind of came in, poked his head in, and we were able to ask some follow-up questions in a less, formal setting. And, but it was all on the record, and the word alignment came up again there. The team put out a video of Joe Brady meeting with the One Bills Drive employees in the team meeting room. Everybody filed in, gave him a standing ovation to welcome him as the new coach. And he addressed the employees. And within that, the word alignment was emphasized, in which he is pointing at Brandon Beane, nodding to him with vigor to underscore that these guys are in lockstep. And I think we are to deduce that Sean McDermott was not, or at least not to Brandon Beane and Terry Pegula's satisfaction. They did not like that, the way it had gone. But by the way, alignment to the point that Brandon Beane and Joe Brady dressed identically. They both wore navy blue suits with a white shirt and a red tie and brown shoes. And I even double checked because they might have been wearing the same watch, but that's not true. And the blue and the Bills lapel pin over their heart in the same exact spot. Joe Brady went with the clunky gold watch, whereas Brandon Beane went with the what's the watch? The Apple Watch.
Oh, the Apple Watch. Yeah, I got one of
Whatever
those.
that's called, or something like that. Something looked like that. Maybe it was one of those watches that these tennis players are wearing that's becoming,
Yeah.
but it was more of a sporty, watch.
Yeah. I'm just checking this just for posterity in the record.
Yes.
Sean McDermott at the introductory press conference 9 years ago. I'm watching it right now. Blue suit, light blue shirt. The tie is red, silver, and blue striped with a red pocket square Bill's lapel. So similar, but not exactly the same. Of course, Brandon Beane wasn't the general manager. Let's see what Doug Whaley was wearing. I don't know. So I don't know. Just to kind of point out.
There is not a fashion designer at One Bills Drive that got these guys dressed. They would have made sure that they at least had something on that was different. But they were also just gushing over Josh Allen. And I wanted to get your take on that aspect of it, Jonah, and your general thoughts too on the news conference Thursday. But to me, it seemed a bit over the top. And I'm not saying it was performative, but it seemed a little bit much in terms of I love Josh Allen. Everything we do, we are going to do for Josh Allen. You could almost hear Bryan Adams singing in the background, the theme from Robin Hood. Everything I do it for you. And all the talk about Josh, and getting emotional just looking at Josh. And it makes me then take to the next step. I mean, just the emotion. I think it was good. It was, this is a guy getting a realization of a dream. 36 years old, finally a head coach in the NFL. He's been interviewing for these jobs for years. He finally gets the big break, and it's with Josh Allen. I can understand the emotion, but I've heard from some people since the news conference who wonder, is this a CEO behavior? Do you talk about that? And
go on.
And I just wanted to, just to emphasize, how many, not emphasize, but just to make the note before I throw it over to you, how many Super Bowl winning coaches out there gush and fawn over their quarterback like Joe Brady was doing yesterday? Andy Reid's reserved. Bill Belichick was reserved. I don't know. Did Nick Sirianni do this with Jalen Hurts? I don't know. Name your quarterback. Did Sean Payton do this with Drew Brees? Tony Dungy with Peyton Manning? Yes, there's obviously respect and the flowers get thrown. But yesterday it seemed to be is like not everybody, Joe Brady was crushing hard on Josh Allen.
Well, so I have an overall take on the Joe Brady CEO personality vibe of the press conference that's a little independent of the Josh Allen question. So maybe if I answer your query about Josh Allen, then we
Oh,
can get
this
into
conversation can go
some of the
anywhere,
rest.
wherever
Yeah,
we
yeah,
want to
but
take
I
it.
think I
That's
kind
what
of
we
want to
do.
respond to this Josh Allen uh, take that you have, and then get into the other take. So I can't think of another NFL head coach fawning over the quarterback quite in that way. Maybe it has happened with someone coaching Peyton Manning or something like that. But it does feel similar to things that we might have seen with JJ Redick coming in to coach LeBron James or other coaches for LeBron James or superstars in other sports, where impressing the star player is the number one role of the job.
Michael
Now,
Jordan and Doug Collins.
yeah, I mean, I'm not old enough to really remember how that was, and I don't know if Phil Jackson did that with Michael Jordan, but maybe other coaches. Doug Collins actually, when he took over the Wizards, that was all about his relationship with Michael Jordan, and so that might be a good comparison there. But look, I do think Bills fans wanted to hear that, and the national reaction to the coaching change and this moment in time in Bills history was that this is all about Josh Allen, and the next head coach has to be the very best coach of Josh Allen, not necessarily coach of the whole team and the defense. The Bills have said they wanted this CEO that does everything, but the main analysis from outside the building has been maximize Josh Allen's window, win the Super Bowl with Josh Allen, win the Super Bowl for Josh Allen. There's almost a tenor from not the Bills fans, but from the NFL that Josh Allen deserves the Super Bowl championship more than the Buffalo Bills and the Bills fans in a way. Uh, and so I think that was reading the room and reading the culture about what the Bills fans and NFL fans kind of wanted to hear, and it was definitely the subtext of it, but a lot of the text was that Josh Allen didn't make this decision, that he backed off a little bit on promoting the offensive coordinator. And he said it on the interviews, but it was more listening and being the voice of the team. But this wasn't about Josh Allen interviewing all the coaches and making sure that Josh Allen got his guy. And that Joe Brady had said that maybe he had talked to Josh Allen less in the past week than he ever had before. He wasn't trying to play the Josh Allen card too hard in the interviews, even if maybe he did that in the inauguration event that we witnessed yesterday. Josh Allen himself, when he spoke to us in his press availability, I think, distanced himself from being the quarterback that picked his coach. And I do wonder if maybe he had a little more role in that, and probably in a subliminal way. I think that the Bills picked the coach that they thought Josh Allen would be happy with
Yeah.
without Josh Allen telling them this is the coach I want.
I think Josh Allen picked the coach not in a overt way, like you're saying. I don't. Josh Allen didn't say that's my guy, or I want him, or else, or you better get him, or even give like these are my top three. Go, get one of them. So I do believe that there is some plausible deniability with Josh Allen and Joe Brady. However, as you said, I've been using the word subconsciously, even at the very least. Whatever questions Josh Allen was asking, or if he was sitting there silently, the poker face, whatever it is, everybody in that room was cognizant of what Josh Allen was doing with every question and every answer that was
Mm-hmm.
given during that interview. I can guarantee it. Body language. Is he nodding his head? Does he look confused? Is he disinterested when somebody's talking? Is he engaged? Is he smiling? Like there's all kinds of body language and cues that you can get to find out this is the guy Josh Allen really likes. Look at the photos that were coming out from the Bills yesterday of Josh Allen with the doe eyes, looking up at Joe Brady, and Joe Brady, looking back at Josh Allen. The Bills want you to know that almost that there's a love affair between these two men who are going to be working together to try to get that elusive Lombardi trophy. And yes, it gets you in the feels as a fan and all those things and all the motivational poster, the stuff that you see hanging in the office, it's about vision and it's about mentality and it's about what was the other vision, mentality, and I can't remember what the third thing was. There were, but anyways,
Synergy, alignment. There was a lot of talk about that.
love, that's about love.
Love,
But
yeah.
there was a specific phrase that was mentality and energy, of course, because Joe Brady is so full of energy, vision, mentality, energy. All these things that's going to spill over, and again, it's a lot of the Sean McDermott wasn't a Dick Duran, skulking around in the building, fly on the wall, or wallflower, I should say. So yeah, there are a lot of things that you say in a news conference, and it was light on substance, which all these news conferences are. They weren't going to announce offensive coordinators or scheme transitions or free agent moves or targets in the draft. So it's hot. It's big on buzzwords and corporate speak and coach speak. But the things that really came through to me was the everybody being goo goo for each other.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, and I think Joe Brady won the press conference in some ways, but I don't know if he did any better than Sean McDermott did 9 years ago. And I actually think maybe Sean McDermott had a better performance at his press conference overall, and the change in culture vibe that he brought to his very first meeting with, Buffalo and the Bills media. And even though it wasn't
If you
really
talk to the
necessary.
veterans of the beat, Jonah, just real quick, if you talk to the veterans of the beat, one of the great introductory news conferences in Bill's history is Mike Mularkey.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but also Rex Ryan, who's undefeated in press conferences,
Right.
as far as winning them, and he, really riled up the fan base and said a lot of things that people wanted to hear and answered the questions more directly, I think, because that was just his kind of nature. And it's hard. I heard somebody say it's hard to win these press conferences and easy to lose them, but I think it's the other way around. I think the Bills fans want to like the coach. They want to get behind the team, and unless you really fumble the ball the way Terry Pagula kind of did a week ago. Those press conferences are a little bit different, but these introductory press conferences, it's hard to, I think, fumble the ball in those. I think you really got to misspeak and say the wrong things, but also be the wrong coach. If the fans don't want to accept you, there might not be anything you can say. But I think more than anything, winning over Josh Allen, which I guess he already had won him over as the offensive coordinator and even the quarterback's coach before he ever had the job. But Josh Allen's body language, as you mentioned, the big smile on his face, being there, sitting in the front row, co-signing this hire from the very start, this promotion, I think went a long way to setting the tone. And especially when the last time we saw Josh Allen, he was so tearful and emotional and sad at the loss, that seeing Josh Allen happy again set the mood for the Bills fans. And I think what Joe Brady did in winning the press conference was begin to win back the Bills fans that seemed to be dissatisfied with the Sean McDermott firing, the Brandon Beane promotion. And there wasn't a very good response, at least on social media, to the hiring of Joe Brady earlier in the week. His popularity or the approval rating for this hire didn't seem all that high when it leaked out Tuesday morning that he was going to be the coach.
It
But
was
coming out of this
terrible.
press conference, yeah, right, coming out of this press conference, that's really seemed to shift it. It does seem like Bills fans, people that watched the press conference, people who were there, even the team employees. I got a sense, and even a couple people I know, that everybody likes Joe Brady in that building, and they were happy for him and his family getting this promotion as much as they're happy about who's coaching the Bills. So there was a lot of just good feelings about this, and it's really a culture change and personality change in the leadership and the workplace culture there, more than anything that I think is football, X's and O's, and stuff you're going to see on Sundays. It seems like everybody's going to enjoy this period of Bills football Monday through Friday and in the spring and the summer more than they have in the past. And if it leads to a Super Bowl, awesome. But if it doesn't, they're going to have a lot more fun along the way.
Joe Biscaglia, my teammate at The Athletic, posted a poll at Twitter the morning that Joe Brady was announced as the next Bills head coach, and the poll stayed up for 24 hours. So it ran into the next morning from about noon to noon. That would have been Tuesday to Wednesday, right? And his question was unscientific, but it was clean. And it's hard to quibble with the way he set this up in terms of producing a margin for error on this type of question and answer. He says, do you like the Joe Brady hire as new Bills coach? Yes, no, I'm not sure yet. Yes was 9.6%. No was 67%, and I'm not sure yet, 23.4%. So less under double digits of Bills fans who had a chance to well, I guess it's mostly initial reaction on there, but you had sometimes several hours over the course of time. Oh, by the way, and I wanted to look at this. How many votes did that get? That is almost 19,000 votes. That's a lot. That is not a small sample size. 18,786 votes when the poll closed on around noon on Wednesday. 9.6% in favor of Joe Brady. So uninspiring was the word I used. It didn't jibe with the stated reasons for firing Sean McDermott. And I said in my column that after the Joe Brady hire, it just seemed that much more personal between the Bills and Sean McDermott than they wanted to admit, because they said they needed a new voice. They said they wanted the CEO. They said they needed to get over the playoff wall. Well, Joe Brady has some masonry in that playoff wall. The Bills had the ball with a chance to win in each of the last 3 elimination games and did not execute. His voice has been the loudest for Josh Allen, the most important player on the team for the last 4 years. And again, a lot of the qualities that they're talking up Joe Brady about, Sean McDermott brought to the table as well. Now I get it. A lot of people look at the offensive numbers and say, well, this is the progression you get as somebody who's led such a great offense in the NFL over the last couple of years, not without its shortcomings or its criticisms, but statistically speaking, and in terms of production, you can't argue too much with what Joe Brady has done. But now he has to put together a staff that maintains all of the things that Sean McDermott did, in addition to adding that missing piece. And that's the big ask. And that's what Kurt Warner said when I interviewed him late last week for a story. He was, and why, and the story, the theme of the story was, how much say should Josh Allen have on the next head coach? I interviewed Kurt Warner and Bruce Arians, 2 Super Bowl winners, and Kurt Warner being a Hall of Famer and a 2-time MVP. And he was like, I don't know that I would have the wherewithal to help a team pick a coach. He played for 4 or 5 of them. Tom Coughlin and Dennis Green and Mike Martz and Dick Vermeil, a couple of Hall of Famers in there. I don't know. Maybe Tom Coughlin's not in yet. And with Bill Belichick not getting in this week, who's to say what coach is in the Hall of Fame or not? Kind of, blows the criteria out of the water. But yeah, Kurt Warner's thing was, you got to be careful as a quarterback how much say you have on this decision. You don't know what you don't know in regard to what this job entails. And Ryan Fitzpatrick had a great comment on his podcast. Let me read it. Let me juxtapose these 2 things. Bear with me while I look for it. So on his podcast, this was before the hire. This was right after Sean McDermott had been fired. All right, Ryan Fitzpatrick. This may take a little while, but I'll skip through part of it. He say, where do they go? I don't know. My whole take on this whole thing is they need a veteran coach that's going to preach accountability, somebody that's going to be very demanding of Josh. I made the point during the Jacksonville playoff game that Josh, his play and everything he did pre-snap was as good as it had been all year. I just feel like in general, overall this year, if I'm looking at something where I say, gosh, maybe Josh took a step back this year, it was the consistency of that, the pre-snap stuff. The pre-snap command and wizardry. And that's something that has to be demanded out of him every day. I think the hard part for me is, what is everybody doing now? They're going young. So he's talking about the, Sean McVay tree and all this stuff. And he says, I think they need a veteran coach, somebody with a little bit more of an iron fist. Is if you bring in a young, cool, hip head coach, he's going to be buddies with Josh. He's going to suck up to Josh. He's going to go golfing with Josh. That's not what he needs. That's not what's best for his career. What's best for his career is he has somebody that comes in and pushes him every single day, because there is another level that Josh can get to, especially mentally. But he has to be coached hard. And if you bring in a young guy, I just don't see it happening. I see him wanting to be his friend more than his coach. And
Yeah,
then
and
we saw
also
the guy who's all in love with Josh and is going to do everything he can for Josh.
yeah, and also notwithstanding that Josh Allen played poorly and had 4 turnovers and was very much part of the reason why the Bills lost the last game in the playoffs. But aside from that performance, getting a better version of Josh Allen doesn't seem like what the Bills need to get over the hump and get into the Super Bowl. There's different elements and different sides of the ball where the Bills fell short in the playoffs, and maximizing Josh Allen doesn't necessarily, that's not the room for improvement that I think most Bills fans and most NFL observers see as how the Bills go from the tremendous success they had under Sean McDermott to the ultimate success that they want to have under this next coach. It's not, we need more out of Josh Allen. It's, the defense has to play its best in the playoff games, and the people around Josh Allen need to support him a little bit better. And maybe Joe Brady, as the head coach, will get something better and different and ultimately more Super Bowl caliber out of the offense in the playoffs. I think it really remains to be seen if Joe Brady and whatever defensive coordinator he brings in can do better on that side of the ball than Sean McDermott, and the culture setting and the leadership and the maturity of a head coach. It, I'm dubious that Joe Brady will be better than that at Sean McDermott. I think at best, you hope that he's just as good as Sean McDermott was, and that they don't get any worse in any of those areas. And I want to come back to that and get your take on my take and some takes that have been shared with me, opinions and analysis, just about the overall vibe, winning the press conference part of it from Joe Brady, because, I had a feeling about it as it was going on, that in the moment I felt like maybe this is just my own cynicism. And then I saw the reaction that was overwhelmingly positive from most of the other media and Bills fans, and just feeling the way people felt coming out of the press conference. I actually thought Joe Brady did very well in the second press conference with reporters where there were no cameras, but it was on the record, and some one-on-one interviews. And as the day went along, uh, became more positive about the overall performance. But the way I felt early on, then I got a message from a very smart Bills fan that I know that's a regular listener to this podcast, had this opinion, and I talked to another journalist friend of ours, friend of the podcast, that doesn't cover the Bills but covers Buffalo sports, and sort of confirmed some of this sentiment that they had. And the nervousness, the aw shucks, is just, this is the greatest day of my life and my dreams have come true maybe a little bit sooner than I ever thought they could, and thank you so much for picking me. The youth and inexperience in this specific role that Joe Brady is coming into, never being a head coach before, and having to learn on the job, and not knowing what he doesn't know quite yet. All of that into the press conference and the early portions of the press conference. I don't didn't really inspire, I think, a lot of confidence that he's quite ready for this job right away. And maybe this is unfair, but my overall feeling of that, and especially the early portions of the introduction event yesterday, was of a coach who's going to be a good head coach in this league someday, but it's going to take some time, and that year one is probably not going to be the year that that happens, and that it might not even be job one. It just felt to me like a young, talented offensive play caller that has potential to be an excellent head coach, but maybe is getting this opportunity a little too early in his career and in his life and his maturing process. Or even if it's not too early, that it just feels like a year from now we're going to be hearing a press conference with Joe Brady about how much he learned from that first season and how much he needed to go through different things, whether it's leading the team, the defensive side of the ball, and needed to learn from mistakes or figure out how to do things that he doesn't know yet. And that just seems to me like it puts the Bills in a more precarious situation in year one or year two than they were with a veteran head coach like Sean McDermott, who wasn't old when he got the job, but also had a lot more time as a coordinator and working under other head coaches in the NFL. He was just older and more mature in his coaching journey than it feels like Joe Brady is right now. I don't know if you got any of that
Yeah,
sentiment.
I did, and I think that really lends itself to what I was saying about uh, his gushing over Josh Allen. It's almost like he's only 6 years older than Josh Allen. Um, of him to be, but like I get to be a head coach and I get to coach this guy. It's almost like I wow. I mean, I don't want to. I get it. It's exciting, but he already knows this guy. I mean, you've been with him for 4 years, and the the energy aspect of it, the emotional part of it. So people around the NFL, especially he's interviewed for a lot of jobs. He's been around his energy level that they talk about. The Bills, even their social media even emphasized it when they posted his announcement on social media about the juice in the building. There's a new energy, a new juice in the building, and that plus there's an executive that I was texting with last night, NFL executive, and he's familiar with Joe Brady and this part of his identity that he is just about to jump out of his skin at all times. He's just always ready to go. He's wired. Um, Brady even talked about it. Whether it's espressos or too many Gatorade fast twitches, he's just always amped up and ready to go. And then, so this executive was listening to the news conference. He wasn't watching it, but he was listening to it. And he said, I was wondering if this guy was going to be able to keep it together. And he was listening and he was kind of like, all right, he gets it that he's excited and this is a big moment for him, but continually almost breaking down in tears. Or maybe I don't think it was theater, but you can easily, make a nice theatrical exhale to, gather yourself. But he was it was a little bit much for this NFL executive to. I think it speaks to what you were talking to. So here's Alec Anderson, Bill's offensive lineman, one of my favorite guys in the locker room to talk to, and he was asked what are the Bills getting in Joe Brady as their head coach. He says, we're getting a dog, man. I think Joe's going to connect the bridge of bringing the offensive energy to the defensive energy. I think he'll be able to mesh that very well and have the team just amped up and ready to run through a motherfucker's face every week. I'm excited about it. High energy. He sets the tone when he walks in of, I drank 5 high twitch energies. His heart is about to blow up, he says. We're all like, all right, his energy's high. We've got to get our shit together. We've got to be ready to go, ready to play hard and sacrifice. So, okay, different coaches, different strokes for different coach. But the the uh, the team responds, and Brady even said, he says, I'm the temperature, I'm the weather that this team responds to, and if that's what they're going for, yeah, maybe it gets them ready to go. But man, he's going to have to find a way to temper some things at some point. Now he played for we mentioned his name earlier, Kurt Warner, who played for a notorious crier in Dick Vermeil, but Dick Vermeil wasn't, nobody ever thought that Dick Vermeil just did 6 rails in the men's room before going over the meeting. So the emotion, the energy, the frazzledness, the whatever, it's just all, it's frenetic. Might be great. Might be great to cover. Might be great for fans. Might be what you want to see.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too critical of him for being emotional or being himself because I also think it made it a interesting press conference, the genuine emotion, and it was also what I think a lot of Bills fans connected with and enjoyed about it. But what struck me was just the newness of it all for him. I don't think he's ever stood up in front of that many people and spoken publicly in that way. And he's a first-time head coach, so this was his first time being introduced in a news conference. But he hasn't been a head coach of a smaller college or any college before that. And sometimes these guys, even if they're young and new in the NFL, have life experiences preparing him for this that Joe Brady doesn't quite have, or he has some. He was offensive coordinator at LSU, but uh, yeah, it just felt like a very young, fresh coach, being born into the world yesterday. And that is maybe the energy the Bills are looking for, and maybe it's the energy they need. But it also seems to track with learning on the job and making early mistakes and maybe being the head coach the Bills need someday, but not right away.
Yeah, I think that that's a strong indicator. I think he'll you may become the greatest coach ever, but he's got some learning to do, and he is just 36 and doing it for the first time. Now, granted, there are 30-year-olds coaching and doing a very good job in the NFL. Sean McVay broke down a lot of barriers in that regard, and people are always looking for the next hot young coordinator. And here's this guy who, hey, have you heard he's part of the Sean Payton coaching tree? And speaking of the word alignment, the next most popular phrase was Sean Payton coaching tree. He was hitting us over the head with that. Um, spending 2 seasons there with Drew Brees, I don't know how much you glean from that. But hey, you know, Josh McDaniel had great offensive rankings and comes from a great coaching tree, and all these types of things. It doesn't always. There are no guarantees in this, but yeah. And here's another thing. Here are a couple of hires that I think Bills fans should be optimistic about. Reported, not announced yet, but reported offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael, longtime Sean Payton lieutenant with the New Orleans Saints, and most recently, I believe, is an advisor with the Denver Broncos. Uh, he's reportedly going to be the offensive coordinator, and Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach. And why those are significant. Carmichael, because he is familiar with that role that Joe Brady wants an offensive coordinator to fill, not a play caller. The guy who oversees things, helps install the offense during the week, takes the head coach's vision, the head coach who will be calling the plays like Sean Payton did all those years and still does, and applies it to the day-to-day practice while Coach Brady is off handling things like special teams and defense and all the different things that you have to do as the leader of an organization, going over the medicals, having meetings, talking to the front office about the trade deadline or free agency or whatever. All the different things that the coach must do that doesn't allow himself to be laser focused as the play caller. That's what Pete Carmichael will handle during the week and then from the press box on Sundays. And then Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach, he is an acolyte of Aaron Kromer, who just retired, and he's the offensive line coach that everybody there at the Bills loves. Pat Meyer worked with Kromer directly and then was the Steelers offensive line coach most recently. So he's going to come in and take over a crew that's very familiar with Kromer and that style and that system of coaching linemen that has been in place and very successful. But of course, the defensive coordinator is the big one. That's the guy who is going. And the other thing I should say about Carmichael and Meyer, they've been around. They can help bring Brady along to recognize and cope with any little thing that comes up. These guys have been around the block so many times that they can help Joe Brady navigate these things as a first-time head coach. And then the defensive coordinator, I would assume, is going to be a veteran steeped in knowledge who has a similar role but that's not what's being reported out there. But that might be maybe there'll be a coordinator and advisor type combo. I don't like a Leslie Frazier,
Well,
not him
that,
specifically, but
right. Or a special teams coach could maybe be a very experienced uh, coach. But what's missing right now, and there's hires to be made, and this could be solved. You mentioned someone like Leslie Frazier is someone with NFL head coaching experience. And Sean McDermott thought that was important to have on his initial staff when he was 42 years old. Joe Brady is 36 and little less NFL experience than Sean McDermott was. Maybe he does hire Jim Schwartz or a defense coordinator that has been an NFL head coach before, or a special teams coordinator that has been an NFL head coach before. But if he doesn't, that seems to be something that's really going to be missing from that coaching staff if it's not addressed.
Yeah, and there was a report out there earlier in the week that Jim Leonard would be a leading candidate. We haven't heard much about that since the report came out from Adam Schefter, but we've heard that Jim Leonard reportedly interviewing with different NFL teams about their defensive coordinator openings also. Now, Jim Leonard would be considered on the young side, and he is experienced, but not like we were just talking about.
Was an interim head coach at Wisconsin for part of a season.
Yeah, and has incredible rankings. He's been every step up the ladder ever since his playing days as an undrafted pick out of Wisconsin with the Bills and the Jets, most notably. He has been very impressive every step along the way. People say like this guy's got it as a future coordinator, head coach, whatever he wants to do. A lot of people think he will eventually be able to do. But he's going to be in demand for that. The right place. Maybe the Bills aren't the right fit for him. We'll find out.
Jim Leonard, if he is the pick, there's a lot to like
Mhm.
about him. As you mentioned, rising star, has had success, just his personality and track record as a player and a coach. But a different philosophy of defense than Sean McDermott ran. And even if he's the greatest defensive coordinator they can find, you do wonder if there's going to be a period of transition with the players on the roster and how they fit Jim Leonard's defense. And maybe he's the right fit for the Bills, but how much are the Bills the right fit for him right now?
Yeah, the Bills have been drafting for Sean McDermott's defense, and whether it be edge rushers generally translate, but you're talking about those smaller size linebackers, the interior defensive linemen that, what do they do with Terrell Bernard, who just signed a contract extension and keeps getting hurt? What position does he play in this new coach's defense? Do they want to reinvest in Matt Milano? What do they do? Again, I mentioned the interior defensive linemen. These draft picks that we haven't really seen much of in recent years. What are these? How do the we can it's pointless just to list. I can just list off positions, I guess. But the new coach is going to have his things that he wants, not only in terms of alignment and scheme type things, but size, body size. They're like these. There might be a different belief from Joe Brady and the next defensive coordinator regarding, we want big linebackers. We want guys who can stuff the run. We want, who knows? There's all
Well,
kinds.
and specific techniques. I mean, some of these players who were good fits in Sean McDermott might have the ability to be good fits in anybody else's defense, but there could be a transition period of just learning how to play the defense and techniques. And, a lot of what became the strength of Sean McDermott's defense and Sean McDermott's coaching was players that knew exactly where to be and how to be in the perfect spot to have the ball thrown to them for interceptions at certain times. And that takes time on task, as Sean McDermott like to say, to develop. And it might take some more time on task for these players to learn how to thrive in a new defense.
Jonah, let's switch to the Sabres. I don't want to
I
get
want to make a point about
yeah,
Josh
yeah.
Allen, actually. Josh Allen's foot.
Oh,
I don't know
right.
if you
Yeah,
got
you
any
did.
takes on
Yep.
that, but I think that was some pretty big news that came out yesterday. I don't know if it was super surprising. I think we thought Josh Allen had a significant foot injury, and Brandon Beane did say surgery was a possibility, and it was a little shocking to see him on crutches, but shouldn't have been all that surprising. And Josh Allen said what I think many of us thought he was going to say. Oh, it's just a little bone, minor surgery, good to go, as he tends to say about all of his injuries. But then he said something that I thought that really made my ears perk up when he said fifth metatarsal bone, which, the foot's not very big. All the bones in the foot are small, but that's one of the bigger bones in the foot. And there's different injuries you can have to your fifth metatarsal. I was looking some of this up. I broke my fifth metatarsal bone when I was 13 years old. And now I'm not a professional athlete. I was only 13 years old, and technologies were different. I didn't have the same medical care that he has, but that was a significant break that took about 8 weeks in a cast and much, much longer before you gained full strength and being able to use your foot. I'm sure Josh Allen probably didn't maybe have the most significant fifth metatarsal bone injury you can have, which is a Jones fracture. and is getting good medical treatment. I do think this injury is going to heal properly and not affect him in the future. But his sentiment of I could play this week if we had to, and I played on this for 5 weeks and I could have kept playing on and on and on. I think as far as the maturity and stuff, Josh Allen maybe needs to get out of that mindset, especially with a foot injury, because the problem with foot injuries is the different bones and ligaments and tendons in your foot. One injury can cause compensations to lead to other injuries, and you can have foot problems lingering long after, possibly for the rest of your life. There's basketball players that their careers have been affected permanently or ended because one minor foot injury turned into a major foot injury. And playing through every injury, no matter what, just tolerating the pain. Josh Allen thinking he could possibly play a game Sunday after having surgery and needing crutches to walk around in a boot. Someday there might be an injury that Josh Allen tries to play through, and that's not wise. And maybe Josh Allen playing through the pain, the start streak, and never missing a game to injury was a feature of the Josh Allen experience in his 20s that should not carry into his 30s. I don't know if you agree with that. I'm not giving him medical advice, but I thought it was a little, for the Bills fan perspective and the long-term health of Josh Allen, disturbing that even though he needs crutches and a walking boot to walk around, he still thinks he could play on Sunday through that injury.
Well, did we get actual clarification? Because nobody really, I think, took him seriously. And everybody had so many questions
Right,
to ask
yeah.
regarding Joe Brady and Sean McDermott and all kinds of other stuff. But was he saying that he could have played with that surgery, having just had the surgery,
He
or he
did
would have said,
say
I wouldn't
that.
have
He
had
did
the
say that.
surgery?
I don't know if that's seriously how it would play out. He wouldn't have had the surgery yet if they were still playing, but he said on Pat McAfee, and he said it to us. Now he says that it doesn't necessarily mean his foot is, playable, but he said somehow, some way, if we had a game Sunday, he would have figured out how to play on this injury. And then he was asked about, being ready for the OTAs. And that was kind of his answer that, it was a small bone, minor surgery, not a crazy surgery, is a direct quote. We'll be good to go when we need to be go. And, I think the Bills are going to handle this properly, but he probably shouldn't rush back in OTAs. He probably shouldn't rush back to the golf course. There should be some load management through the off season and into training camp, making sure this foot injury heals 100% before he tries to do anything on the foot
He
injury.
did say it was an
And,
old injury. He said he didn't want to get
well,
into it, but this is an old injury.
yeah.
So, yeah,
And
making sure it heals and doesn't become a recurring injury for the rest of his career would be
Yeah, and certain
wise.
injuries that may come around in the future, it might be better for Josh Allen to miss a game or two to let the injury heal and not play through every injury. Or, you know, every time he gets checked for a concussion, he's right back on the field. Sometimes rest and recuperation and being smart and safe with injuries is the better long-term strategy than always going back in the game as quickly as possible.
And with the style that he plays, we don't need to get into it. It's been a topic 100 times over since he's been drafted, but he's about to turn 30, and there's going to come a point where his mind thinks that he can make a certain play, but maybe it's not because of injury, but it's because he is 0.2 of a second slower on something, and the play that you thought you could make, it ends up really costing you. And that's to say that this is a violent sport. Um, it reminds me, to use a boxing analogy, of somebody like Roy Jones Jr., who was slick and elusive and would taunt you by putting his face in places to make you punch, knowing that you weren't going to hit him, and then he'd counter and make you look foolish. Well, then there came a point eventually in Roy Jones's career where he couldn't move out of the way fast enough. His brain would tell him he could, and this isn't the middle infielder who can't get into the gap to turn the double play as quickly as he used to, or the right fielder who can't sprint into the alley to track down, the fly ball before it touches the grass, or the basketball player who can't quite get his hand up over the rim like he used to. This is a violent sport, and when you're off by an inch or 1/10 of a second, you get hurt, and you get hurt bad. And so those are the types of things that's what age does. And we all know it. I'm just kind of putting it in terms that I think that this Josh Allen will not last forever. And the indestructible, invincible guy who, treats that blue medical tent like it's Superman coming out of the phone booth, it can't last forever, and it won't. And if we start to, when you start to see it, sometimes it happens quick. And I'm not predicting that either, but it's a great point to bring up.
Yeah, and Josh Allen not only playing through the injuries, but over the course of his career in the last few seasons, uh, whether it's been the foot or his elbow or, the hand, some of the other things he's not always been great at protecting those injuries. He's taken hits on the elbow when he had a bad elbow. He's taken hits on the hand when he had a bad hand, so on and so forth. So that's another thing. If you are going to play with injuries, other quarterbacks have figured out ways to not take hits, throw the ball away, and protect their injuries to play hurt in a smarter way. And this is an insignificant thing, but I think it tracks into this line of thinking. Even when it comes to the preseason, when Sean McDermott would not play Josh Allen, he would, protect it from the injuries. But Josh Allen would always say, "I want to be out there. I want to play. I trust my coach, but if it's up to me, I'm always out there." And I don't know. I think it's okay for him to say sometimes, "I'm hurt," or "I'm trying to avoid injury, and it's time for me to rest this week." Or, I mean, I guess he did rest in those Week 17 games, but still went out there and took the snap. And I advocated for him to play more in that game, for different reasons. So maybe I'm being a little hypocritical, but uh, I don't know. Just I think that going into his 30s, maybe the Josh Allen that plays through every injury, rain or shine, Superman coming out of the blue tent, uh, needs to be reevaluated.
How about Superman coming out of the phone booth on December 9th? They went in Clark Kent, and ever since then, the Buffalo Sabres are 23-1, hottest team in hockey. And we've been saying it for a couple of weeks. It just doesn't seem to let up. This is just a good team now. And they're talking about the Stanley Cup. Alex Tuch dared to go there last night after the most recent win. He had a hat trick. Rasmus Dahlin had a hat trick the night before that, or the game before that. Jonah, you've been around this team. You've been at the games. Um, can you even put into words what we've seen in the last month and a half?
I think the words I would say, I said this on our WIVB Plus show this morning, is that there's still 30 games, 29 games left in the season, but it feels like the drought is over. The Sabres are third in the Atlantic Division, I think fifth in the Eastern Conference. They're 8 points above the playoff cut line. It's not guaranteed they're going to make the playoffs, but it certainly feels like it. The question now is how high they're going to be seeded, if they can get higher in the division, home ice advantage, and how soon, how early they're going to clinch the playoff spot. It's not, whether this is going to fall apart and they're not going to make it. I think the different models have their playoff odds somewhere between like 75 and 80 something percent, which isn't a sure thing. But the Sabres had 61 points in 50 games. And I saw a stat that over the past 25 years, teams that reached the 60-point mark by the 50-game mark have made the playoffs 96% of the time. Alex Lyon talked yesterday about a team he played on in Detroit. I didn't really catch which season this was. That was in a similar position. Then they had a 10-game losing streak in March and missed the playoffs. So that could happen, but that's what it's going to take to happen. The Sabres are going to have to go on a 10-game winless streak probably to erase what they've done lately. Otherwise, they're in the playoffs, and it's really now about playing for seeding and momentum and not peaking too early, being this good and this confident and playing this well and they're not totally healthy, but being as healthy as they can be going into game 83 as they are here at game 53.
When you heard Alex Tuch mention Stanley Cup, thoughts? Did you have any? Did it
Uh,
resonate with you, or was it just another
so
comment? What was it?
for me in the moment, it didn't make me gasp the way I think it did others. Um, Looking back on it and even the way I used it in my story, I did make more of a bigger deal out of it, that was pretty significant that he said that. I do feel like that's been said in a different context, in a different way, but by Buffalo Sabres players or even management before, that it's not just about ending the drought and making the playoffs, that they're a team that wants to win the Stanley Cup someday, somehow. Lindy Ruff has said it
Maybe it
in different
resonates because
ways.
the fans are ready to hear it.
I think what resonates with it is that behind those words is the way that they're playing, and it's not just words. It's actually
Right. That's what I
the
mean. I
way
don't mean
they're
that the
playing.
fans
Yeah,
haven't
yeah,
been ready, but the fact
right.
that it matches, it lines
Yeah.
up. It's possible.
Yeah, and what he said after, I think, is just as significant. He said they're not just trying to squeak in the playoffs. This isn't just about ending the drought. It's about being a contending team. And the thing I just said, just being as good as they can be going into the playoffs and winning playoff games and winning playoff rounds, and not only being one of the top 16 teams in the league, but being one of the top eight or higher teams in the league. But I do feel like the Sabres have said something like that in worse seasons with worse records, even after losses, that they're trying to win the Stanley Cup someday, and it's not just make the playoffs and have a parade once they make the playoffs and get a wild card spot.
The Olympic break coming up, of course, everybody excited about Tage Thompson playing in it. We don't know about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen with his injury situation and how um, he's going to be able to participate for his homeland. Um, the break coming up, should Sabres fans be concerned? I mean, it's gotten to be the ritual again, like it used to be when the Sabres were good. Um, Middle of the week, let's get together at the bar and watch the Sabres game. That wasn't a thing for the longest time, but it used to. Now everybody knows when the next telecast is. It's appointment viewing again or getting there. We're going to have this break. Should concern that it doesn't carry over or
I think in general, for any NHL team that's playing well right now, there could be some worry about losing that momentum and coming back from the break like it's a brand new season and not being able to pick up exactly where you left off. But I think with this team that the rest and the time off is going to help them. They have some players that are going to get healthier. They have a handful of players that are on track to return after the break. So they're probably going to be a more fortified roster coming out of that. And then the trade deadline, they might make a move to get even better. Uh, so I think in general, the break is going to help the Sabres. Where I do think it could be an issue and some worry is specifically with Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin not getting the break, traveling, playing high stakes games, and the mental and emotional fatigue that could accumulate from being in this playoff race all season long, going to the Olympics with those high stakes, and then coming back, not having the same break that everybody else had. And if those two players uh, suffer from that at all. But what could happen, especially with Tage Thompson, is this like Olympic boost that they get, that playing in Team USA, having success with Team USA, being around these other great players might somehow, you know, enhance Tage Thompson's game or his confidence and his ability. But I do think there's some potential with the Sabres team with the break not being part of it, but just a couple of years ago when they didn't make the playoffs, they missed by 1 or 2 points. The talk was that the mental and emotional fatigue of spending all 82 games trying to make the playoffs wore them out by the end. And even though they're having more success this year, I do wonder if they get to, game 82 and they've already given their all and they're not able to be as good at the end of this run as they are right now. I don't predict that that's going to happen, but I think that would be the concern that uh, that everything's going great now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to continue all the way into the end of April and into May.
Jonah, before AAA comes and shovels your ass out. Thoughts on any hoops news or bandits or anything in the notebook?
I'm going to check out UB tomorrow at home against Akron. UB had lost 5 in a row, then one on the road at Bowling Green. They play nationally ranked and undefeated Miami, Ohio on Tuesday. Well, Miami has one more game, but anticipating them to be undefeated and nationally ranked coming into that game on Tuesday. So that'll be a good matchup for local basketball, and an opportunity for UB to get a big win and maybe a nice crowd to watch a top 25 team. When UB was in the top 25, that was a sold out gym and the hottest ticket in town. I don't think that'll be the case for Miami Ohio. They don't have Wally Zerbiak or players like that to watch, but undefeated at this point in the season is pretty impressive. St. Bonaventure played a top 25 team last week and was down 32 at halftime, but I think they only
Yeah, it
lost
was
by
ugly.
31, so won the second half. They're struggling on defense mostly. Canisius Niagara, they play Tuesday night. I don't know if I'll see that because I'll be at the UB game checking that out, but keeping an eye on how they're playing and if they're going to make it to the NCAA tournament. Damon, number 4 in the country, but did take their first loss against top 10 Gannon on the road. But they're still on track to be number 1 in the East region and possibly host NCAA tournament games at home again. Damon women up to number 14 in the country. Possibility that they're number 1 in their region, could have NCAA tournament men's and women's in Lumsden Gymnasium going on at the same time this March. And looking forward to NCAA tournament basketball in Buffalo mid-March. Who's going to get sent here, and the storylines and possible thrilling games and Cinderella stories and upsets that might happen at KeyBank Center. And monster truck rallies coming to the arena
Who's the
next
favorite in
weekend.
that? What's the line on that?
You know what? I hope it's this truck that has to pull me out of the snow on Parkside Avenue. I hope it's one of the monster trucks.
All right, Jonah. Well, thanks. Hopefully, yeah. Well, when did they get in town? You did say the day, but it kind of flew.
I think it's next weekend, but don't
Oh,
quote me
okay.
on
So they're
that.
not here yet.
During the NHL break, it comes after the Sabres play their last home game a week from Thursday. Big Sabres game Saturday, tomorrow night against Montreal. That's a team they're tied with in the standings. They've beaten them twice lately. The buzz in that building and around that team, the winning has helped, but just overall, Dominic Hasek's documentary is going to premiere online. You'll be able to watch it starting Sunday. There's, I think, a media event tonight. I'm not going to that, but some other people are. Dominic Hasek was at the game last night greeting Alex Lyon in the locker room. That was kind of a cool moment.
Yeah, that was, when I saw that record with Alex Lyon and most consecutive wins, I was like, I covered Marty Baron. He had double digits. It was like 13 or something, but I was reminded of it. There's a quirk. The NHL views you can't have a no decision and and still can maintain your streak. So it
Yeah.
ruined his game started streak, or he had consecutive wins and starts, and also consecutive wins. But he had
Somebody
a
asked me about
decision.
that on a different show this morning, and I was aware of it. I know that's part of, Marty Baron's story, but I didn't know the exact details, the season, and how that worked out, so I wasn't able to talk about it. But yeah, Marty Baron in spirit probably has
Yeah,
the longest lossless streak in Sabres goaltending history. How about
because
Dominic
he had one
Hasek?
of it. He had a lot. So he didn't. He won 13 in a row. He won 13 starts in a row, but and then he won 11 decisions in a row. But early on, he had a shootout loss in relief of an injured Mika Norinen. And then he got a no decision in relief of Mika Norinen during that streak.
Okay.
So the shootout loss, or I can't, whatever it was, but the
Well,
shootout
does that
loss and the no decision ruin either way you want to word it about
right.
consecutive starts or a win streak. It threw it off.
Does that leave another record out there for Alex Lyon to chase, the consecutive decisions, if he gets 11 or 12?
I think it's 14 because I think
14 would be the
as I
number.
recall,
Yeah.
Marty Baron, I think, fell
Starts.
one short. And I don't know why
Starts.
Patrick
Yeah.
Lalime or somebody like that. Anyways, I think
Yeah.
there is something about 14 stands out in my mind with that.
How about Dominic Hasek's longest win streak being 6 and him not being in the
Well,
top 5 in this Sabres list?
because the Sabres weren't very good. They didn't score. A
Well,
lot of
they went to the
his
Stanley Cup Finals and had some pretty good seasons with him.
because they were squeaking them out 2-1, 1-0. The infamous 76 save
Yeah.
shutout, multiple overtimes. They didn't score a lot of goals. Their margin for error was so thin. And I think they went into that as a 7th or 8th seed in
Yeah.
1999. So they weren't a favorite. They were always on the road. I mean, they barely got into the playoffs a bunch of
So
times.
should we ask Lindy Ruff who's the best goaltender he ever coached, Marty Baron or Alex Lyon?
Absolutely.
I wasn't here for this, but I did catch the end of it. Yesterday, uh, Paul Hamilton asked after the morning skate, Lindy, if he was going to use Michael Kesselring on the power play. And I guess Lindy thought that was a ridiculous question and got a little bit of a kick out of it and brought it back up after the power play or after the win last night in the post game. And he kind of gave a little jab to Paul Hamilton about using Kesselring on the power play. But this reminds me of a story you've told that maybe Rob Ray on the power play. Did Lindy
Oh,
have
no,
some
no,
fun with that question?
that was Jeff Morrison, who used to work for Empire Sports. And he and I think Rob Ray might have. Let me take. I don't know. Anyways, the Sabres were going through some issues on the power play. This was very, very early in me covering the team because I had to like look it up because I'm thinking, well, Rob Ray had been with the team forever by the time I started covering in 2001. And Jeff Morrison in a scrum after practice asked Lindy, "Would you ever consider putting Rob Ray on the power play?" And I don't recall exactly what Lindy's answer was, but I think Lindy would use these opportunities to kind of end the news conference in kind of a lighthearted way. But Lindy, I think, was so stunned at the question that he didn't quite know what to do. And I think he answered like he's like, "No, we're not doing that." And then it was kind of the last question, and all the microphones, lower, and the cameras get turned down. And then Lindy was like, Rob Ray on the power play. And it was kind of like, it was off camera, but it wasn't like off the record.
Yeah.
He was just kind of, he was so stunned that the question would be asked that he was, and he's like walking away, just shaking his head, like, where do you get this? But he thought it was funny. It wasn't like he looked down on Jeff Morris. Jeff Morrison was there all the time. He was a veteran sports reporter. So it wasn't like and Lindy he was scoffing, but in a Jesus Christ, is it that bad type.
I mean, Matthias Samuelsson's getting a little bit of power play time now, which a year or two or three ago would have seemed ridiculous. So I think there's hope for anybody.
I recall, and a lot of people would laugh at this because, Samuelsson was, in the doghouse for so many years. But I recall having a conversation with Scotty Bowman a few years ago in which he said that, that guy is like, maybe, I don't know what he said, he's the key to their defense other than Rasmus Dahlin was saying he loved him.
Well, look, maybe he's right. Matthias
Loved him.
Samuelsson playing as well as he is now is a big part of why the Sabres are winning. And when he was healthy and playing well a few years ago, the Sabres had a tremendous record with him in the lineup and a poor record with him out of the lineup. And then it seemed to take multiple seasons for him to get healthy and regain his game. But it's back now. And, he's not the Sabres' best player, but he seems to be their most valuable player night in and night out right now.
Rob Ray has 2 career power play goals, and Hockey Reference doesn't allow you to sort like I'm familiar with on the football side, so I can't look it up as quickly. I mean, if it was a football stat, I'd bang 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 have it, but I'm curious to know if that was garbage time or what the circumstances were when Rob Ray got his 2 power play goals. Probably a good little feature if he remembers them. I bet he does remember them. He only had 41 goals. All right, Jonah, thank you. Good luck with your car. Thanks to everybody for listening or watching Tim Graham and Friends. Please subscribe. It does help our numbers out quite a bit. It helps the algorithms, using finger quotes. It helps helps us our platform, and platforming is huge when it comes to podcasts. So please subscribe, like, rate, comment, all those things. Share it. Tell your friends. And we'll see you next week on a quiet Bills week, probably. Maybe we'll have some coordinator talk or some assistant coach talk. But beyond that, we're probably through the big Bills news until free agency here on Tim Graham and Friends.